Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are, well, taking a deep dive into the world of VR. We're going to be exploring this really fascinating document called Virtual Reality Horizons.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and by the end, of this deep dive, you'll have like a really solid understanding of VR, like its history, potential, some of the challenges it's facing, and where it might be headed. So yeah, it should be fun.
VR is really fascinating. I mean, it's no longer this like futuristic fantasy. It's becoming like a powerful tool. It's shaping like our present and our future.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, and Virtual Reality Horizons really gets into like all the details. Did anything like particularly jump out at you?
Yeah, absolutely. Just the potential, applications of VR across so many industries it's mind-blowing, really.
Right.
Like take healthcare, for example.
Yeah.
VR is already being used to train surgeons, like for complex procedures. Like imagine stepping into a surgeon's shoes, like virtually, before you even pick up a scalpel.
Whoa.
I know. And this kind of simulation can lead to like improved skills and better patient outcomes.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
So like instead of, just reading about a procedure in a book, surgeons can actually like experience it in a safe like an environment.
Exactly, yeah.
That's taking learning to like a whole other level.
Totally. And the applications extend like way beyond healthcare, virtual reality horizons. It also talks about how VR is being used to treat like phobias and anxiety disorders. Like imagine like confronting your fears, but in a safe virtual environment. It's like a really powerful therapeutic tool.
So it's not just about entertainment. It's about like, solving real world problems.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I was also fascinated by this section on education. Like imagine taking a virtual field trip to the Amazon rainforest or exploring like ancient ruins without ever leaving the classroom.
Yeah. Virtual Reality Horizons highlights how VR can just totally transform education, making learning so much more immersive and engaging. Like it's not just reading about history, it's like experiencing it, firsthand.
Okay, I'm sold on the potential. But like, how does this all work? Like, what's the tech behind these immersive experiences?
Right. Well, at its core, a VR system combines like hardware and software to create like the illusion that you're present in a totally different environment, right?
Okay.
You've got the headset, of course, which lets you see the virtual world. Think of those futuristic looking goggles like the Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive.
Right, the headsets that transport you to another dimension.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And inside the headset, you've got like these high resolution displays that create that illusion of depth and surround you with the virtual environment. And then you've got motion sensors and controllers that track your movements in the real world and translate them into actions within the virtual world. So like if you turn your head, your virtual self turns their head too.
Whoa.
Yeah. Or if you reach out your hand, your virtual hand does the same.
That makes sense, yeah. Sounds like a symphony of like technologies all working together. But creating those like detailed virtual environments, I imagine it must take a lot more than just a headset and some sensors.
You're right, yeah. Sophisticated 3D modeling programs, powerful game engines, intricate simulation algorithms all come together to build these interactive worlds. It's a very complex process. It involves building digital assets, scripting interactions, and optimizing performance to ensure, a smooth and immersive experience.
So it's not just about creating like visuals. It's about creating like a whole world that feels real.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like being inside a video game, but way more realistic.
That's a great analogy, yeah. And Virtual Reality Horizons dives into some really interesting stuff about how artificial intelligence and machine learning are being used to make VR experiences even more realistic and responsive.
AI in VR. Okay, that sounds fascinating. Tell me more.
Well, imagine like a VR world that like reacts intelligently to your actions and learns from your preferences.
Right.
AI algorithms can be used to create like more realistic and responsive virtual environments. They can be used to simulate the behavior of like virtual characters, for instance, making them seem more lifelike and unpredictable.
So it's not just a pre-programmed experience. The VR world can actually like adapt and evolve based on your interaction.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, AI is taking VR to a whole new level. It's blurring the lines between reality and simulation even further.
Okay, so VR has like this incredible potential, but it's not exactly like mainstream yet.
Right.
What are some of the hurdles like holding it back?
That's a great question. Despite all the excitement and potential, there are still some challenges facing the VR industry. The document Virtual Reality Horizons really delves into those. One of the biggest hurdles is the technology itself. Developing these sophisticated VR experiences, it's expensive and complex. There are limitations in processing power and battery life that need to be, addressed.
So the technology still has some catching up to do.
Exactly, yeah. And then there's like the issue of accessibility. VR systems can be, quite expensive, putting them out of reach for many people, especially in developing countries. Virtual Reality Horizons highlights the importance of finding ways to make VR more affordable and accessible, for everyone.
Right. And if people can't afford the technology, it won't matter how amazing the experiences are.
Precisely. And we can't forget about the user experience, While VR technology has come a long way, motion sickness is still a common problem for some users. And designing, intuitive interfaces that cater to a wide range of users, that's also a significant challenge.
So creating like a seamless and comfortable VR experience for everyone is still a work in progress.
That's a fair assessment, yeah. But, the industry is actively working on solutions to these challenges. Virtual Reality Horizons discusses ongoing research into mitigating, like, motion sickness, and efforts to make VR more accessible and affordable.
That's encouraging to hear. So even with these challenges, it sounds like the future of VR is like incredibly bright.
Without a doubt, as technology continues to evolve, the possibilities are only going to expand.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so exciting to explore.
I totally agree. This has been a great overview of kind of the current state of VR and some of the challenges it faces. But what about like what's next? What does the future hold for virtual reality?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Virtual Reality Horizons dives into some mind-blowing possibilities like the rise of augmented reality and the emergence of the metaverse.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick dive into those next.
So we've talked about some of the challenges facing VR, but let's shift gears a bit and talk about some of the exciting advancements that are, kind of on the horizon. Virtual Reality Horizons, really digs into some mind-blowing possibilities like the rise of augmented reality
Right.
and the emergence of the metaverse.
Yeah, let's get into that. Those are some pretty hot topics right now. I think a lot of people are still trying to like wrap their heads around what those terms actually mean.
Yeah.
Can you break them down for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've been talking about VR, which like immerses you in a completely digital environment.
Right.
But augmented reality or AR, it kind of overlays digital elements onto the real world.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, think of those Pokemon Go characters that pop up on your phone screen.
Yeah, yeah.
Superimposed on your actual surroundings.
Okay, so AR is kind of like adding a digital layer to our real world.
Exactly. And then there's mixed reality or MR, which takes things even a step further.
Okay.
It blends the physical and digital worlds like seamlessly. So imagine, interacting with virtual objects that appear as if they're physically present in your space. Like, for example, you could be sitting in your living room and see a 3D model of a new couch you're thinking of buying right there in front of you,
Wow.
as if it were actually there.
Wow, that would be so helpful when making decorating decisions. No more like second guessing whether that new sofa will actually fit in the space.
Exactly. Yeah. And the applications go like way beyond, interior design. In healthcare, for example, surgeons could use AR to overlay patient data onto their field of vision during surgery, providing real-time guidance. In education, students could interact with virtual models of dinosaurs or historical artifacts right in their classroom.
Okay, so AR and MR have the potential to like revolutionize a lot of different fields. That's amazing. But let's go back to the metaverse for a moment.
Sure.
It's a concept that's both fascinating and a little bit intimidating.
Right.
Virtual Reality Horizons really emphasizes its potential. What do you see as some of the key benefits?
Well, one of the most compelling aspects of the metaverse is its potential to kind of break down geographical barriers.
Okay.
Imagine like attending a virtual conference with colleagues from, all over the world, or taking a virtual cooking class with a renowned chef from another country. You could be sitting in your living room, but feel like you're actually in, a bustling marketplace in Morocco or a concert hall in Vienna.
It sounds like the metaverse could create a much more like interconnected world.
Exactly. The possibilities for collaboration, learning, and cultural exchange are just immense. You could visit museums and historical sites around the world. You could attend concerts and sporting events. You could even explore different planets, all from the comfort of your home.
It sounds incredible. But are there any concerns about people becoming like too immersed in this virtual world and like neglecting their real world responsibilities?
Sure.
I mean, if you can travel the world and have all these amazing experiences from your couch, like why even bother going outside?
That's a valid concern. It's crucial to maintain a healthy balance between our virtual lives and our real lives. And Virtual Reality Horizons talks about how developers are working to incorporate like features that encourage, responsible use and prevent overuse. Like, for example, some VR platforms already have like built-in time limits and reminders to take breaks. And it's also important to remember that, the metaverse is still in its early stages of development. It's not going to replace the real world anytime soon. It's more about, enhancing our reality and opening up new possibilities.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's like anything else. It's all about moderation and balance. Speaking of advancements, I'm curious about haptic technology. I've heard about those haptic gloves that allow you to like feel virtual objects.
Right.
You can tell us more about those.
Yeah, absolutely. Haptic feedback is a game changer when it comes to immersion in VR.
Okay.
These gloves, they use vibrations and pressure to simulate the sensation of touch. So imagine you're holding a virtual ball, right?
Yep.
You wouldn't just see it, you'd actually feel its weight and texture in your hand.
Whoa, that would add a whole new layer of realism. It's like the difference between like watching a movie and actually being in those movies.
Exactly. And Virtual Reality Horizons touches on how, haptic technology is kind of evolving beyond gloves. Researchers are developing like full body suits that can provide haptic feedback. So you can feel, sensations like wind, temperature changes, even physical contact.
That's incredible. It sounds like we're getting closer and closer to a truly immersive experience where you can't even tell the difference between the virtual and the real. But what about the environmental impact of all this technology? Is there a risk that, VR could become just another energy guzzling industry?
That's an important consideration. And Virtual Reality Horizons actually addresses that specifically. It highlights how the VR industry is becoming increasingly conscious of its, environmental footprint. Companies are exploring, energy-efficient hardware designs, eco-friendly production methods, and even using VR itself to raise awareness about environmental issues.
So VR could potentially be used to promote like positive change in the real world.
Absolutely, yeah. For example, there are VR experiences that simulate the effects of like climate change.
Wow.
Imagine standing on a virtual glacier as it melts before your eyes,
Oh, wow.
or experiencing the devastating effects of deforestation firsthand. These kinds of experiences can be incredibly impactful in raising awareness and inspiring action.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that. It's like using VR to create like empathy and understanding.
Exactly. VR has the potential to be a powerful tool for, for education, for advocacy, for social good.
Right.
And as technology continues to evolve, we can only imagine the incredible ways it will shape our world.
Okay, this has all been incredibly fascinating. We've covered a lot of ground from the basics of VR to its potential applications in healthcare, education, entertainment, and even environmental activism. But I think what a lot of people are wondering is, what does this all mean for us? How will VR impact our lives in the years to come?
That's a great question. And it's one that Virtual Reality Horizons really, really digs into.
Let's dive into that in the last part of this deep dive. So we talked about all the amazing possibilities of VR, right? Revolutionizing healthcare, transforming education, creating these like incredible immersive experiences.
Yes.
But like with any powerful technology, there's always like another side to the coin.
Right.
What about the potential like downsides of VR?
Yeah.
What are some of the things we need to be like cautious about as this technology becomes, more widespread?
Well, that's a really important question, and it's one that Virtual Reality Horizons tackles head on. While VR offers this incredible potential, it also presents us with some serious ethical considerations and potential consequences that we really need to be mindful of.
So what are like some of the red flags we should be looking out for?
Well, one concern is the potential for addiction and overuse.
Okay.
Spending too much time in virtual worlds could lead to people neglecting their real-world responsibilities, work, relationships, even basic self-care. It's easy to get so caught up in these incredibly engaging experiences and lose track of time.
Yeah, I can see that happening. It's like binge watching a show, but on a whole other level.
Exactly. And Virtual Reality Horizons emphasizes the need for developers to design VR experiences with, certain safeguards in place to prevent overuse and encourage healthy habits. For example, some VR platforms already have built-in time limits and reminders to take breaks.
Okay, that's good to hear. So it's not just about creating, amazing experiences. It's also about creating them responsibly.
Absolutely, yeah. Another concern is the psychological and cognitive impact of prolonged VR exposure.
Yeah.
We're still learning about the long-term effects of immersive VR on brain development, especially for young users.
Yeah.
It's something we need to study very carefully as VR becomes more and more prevalent.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a powerful technology, and we need to make sure we're using it in a way that's safe and healthy, especially for kids.
Exactly. And we also need to be mindful of the potential for VR to kind of exacerbate existing social inequalities. If access to this technology isn't equitable, it could create new digital divides. Imagine like a future where only certain segments of society have access to the transformative power of VR.
Right.
That could have some serious consequences for education, employment, even social mobility.
It's like any technological advancement. It has the potential to be a force for good, but it also has the potential to like widen the gap between the haves and the have-not.
Exactly. That's why it's so crucial to ensure that VR is accessible to everyone, regardless of, socioeconomic status. Virtual Reality Horizons really emphasizes that point and talks about like initiatives to make VR more affordable and accessible to underserved communities.
That's encouraging to hear. Yeah, it's important to remember that technology should be a tool for empowerment, not for, division.
Absolutely. And as VR becomes more integrated into our lives, we need to have some serious conversations about its impact on the future of work.
Yeah.
Will it create new jobs or displace existing ones?
Right.
How will it change the way we interact with colleagues and clients?
Right.
These are complex questions that we need to grapple with as VR technology continues to evolve.
It's like VR is forcing us to like rethink the very nature of work.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not just work. VR is also raising all sorts of questions about, social interaction, relationships. How will spending more time in virtual worlds impact our real world relationships? Will it bring people closer together, or will it create more isolation? These are questions we really need to be asking ourselves as VR technology becomes more sophisticated and more integrated into our lives.
It's fascinating and a little bit like daunting to think about all the ways that VR could potentially like reshape our world.
It is. VR is pushing us to confront some really fundamental questions about what it means to be human in this rapidly changing technological landscape.
Yeah.
It challenges our assumptions about reality, identity, connection. It's both exciting and a little bit unsettling.
This has been a truly like eye-opening conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us.
My pleasure.
Before we wrap up, what's like one final thought you want to leave our listeners?
Well, I think as VR technology continues to evolve, it's crucial that we all engage in these conversations about its potential impact on society. We need to be thinking critically about the ethical implications of VR and working together to ensure that it's used responsibly and for the betterment of humanity.
Well said. VR is a powerful tool, and it's up to us to shape its future.
Right.
Thanks again for joining us on this deep dive into virtual reality horizons. It's been an incredible journey.
It has been. It's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, and stay curious about the ever-evolving world around us. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.